Let's go! LSU Recruiting. I am loving what Brian Kelly's doing right now. I know LSU currently sits outside the top 40 nationally. However, there are a ton of top 250 guys from around the country that have LSU listed in their top list that will be committing over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to look at these four names, say the biggest at the most important position at the very end. So let's start off here with Jaxon Howard, a top 100 prospect out of the state of Minnesota. Some people think of him as a tight end. Others think of him as an edge prospect. His dad played in the league. So obviously, you take a look at his top four: LSU, Miami, Minnesota, and Michigan. So once again, Minnesota is not your normal hotbed for recruiting. So obviously, is he actually going to pick the Golden Gophers and stay at home? We don't know. So what I want to do is show you this chart. We did a video on this very chart involving Jaden Rashada. We'll get to Jaden in just a second. So if you want to see us break down what this data actually tells you, you can see the full video. But essentially, what this chart from J. Bud Davis says is your last official visit is always the one that normally tells you where the recruit is going to go. And as you see right here, LSU is currently hosting Jaxon Howard on a visit right now, okay? So that is very interesting, but he also has a visit to Miami later in the week. So preferably, you would have liked to have been the last official visit if you were LSU, but Miami is actually the last official visit. And what's really fascinating is the new recruiting service On3 actually has Minnesota as a slight leader, but you notice it is very slight. LSU still has a 1 in 6 chance of landing Howard, or 1 in 6-ish chance, and these percentages are so close that it really is up in the air. So the next prospect, which is Christian Gray, a 4-star, once again, top 100 player out of DeSmet High School in St. Louis. Now, if that high school sounds familiar, well, LSU has a lot of DeSmet, I've never actually known how to pronounce that, a lot of their influence on the team right now. So LSU currently has Robert Steeples as a cornerback coach. That is where he was the head football coach just a few years ago, and that also helped LSU get Mekhi Wingo to transfer over. So Christian Gray has a top 4 of LSU, Ohio State, USC, and Notre Dame. Now, this is what really fascinates me. His last official visit is set for Ohio State, who is honestly the biggest recruiter just based on recent news. They got a 5-star Carnell Tate wide receiver to commit to them early today. This is very interesting as well. On3 has Notre Dame as the heavy favorite to land Christian Gray, and Ohio State as a very small chance of landing Christian Gray. The data, though, doesn't back that up. With Ohio State being his final official visit, man, I give them a little bit better shot than 2.1%. Still, you were just wanting him to go to LSU. I give LSU a pretty good chance. So let's actually talk about a player that LSU has the highest likelihood of landing. Let's go. So Darron Reed, to me, is such a fascinating recruit. A 6'5", 260, top 250 defensive lineman out of the state of Georgia, and he is announcing in 2 weeks on Independence Day. Very interesting player. So take a look at the official visit data. Once again, kind of like with Gray a minute ago, Darron Reed's first official visit was with LSU. Then he went to Miami, Auburn, and once again, Ohio State. And right now, the On3 recruiting prediction machine has LSU as a slight favorite. So you give Jamar Cain a lot of credit. This is arguably the 2 most reputable defensive line coaches in the country going after Reed here, in obviously Cain with LSU and Larry Johnson at Ohio State. This is going to be very close. I love this kid simply because on the front that he is asked to play, he lines up at every position and produces at every position. That is honestly pretty rare. Normally, you look at a recruit's tape, they're only dominating at one spot. He is legit. Every defensive line technique he has been asked to do, he produces. There's some other things in this game that I find to be very fascinating. He fires out of a 4-point stance a lot. Not many defensive linemen at the college level do that, so that's going to be a little bit of a transition. But still, this kid is an amazing athlete, 6'5", 260. That is that is a great scheme versatile weight for this player. He is a really, really good prospect that fits in really nicely with what LSU wants to do. And to go one step further, this is not a fertile defensive line crop in the state of Louisiana for 2023. Lots of defensive backs, obviously lots of quarterbacks, and a few receivers in there. Not a lot of elite defensive linemen in this crop. So, yes, LSU got Quincy Wiggins last year and Ty-G Hill, but Darron Reed is really, really, really good. It's just Jaden Rashada. And look, he is a guy that's committing later this week. Obviously, a top 50 quarterback, top 50 national player, and a top 10 quarterback. Now, let's take a look at the official visit data for Jaden Rashada, and you see it as followed: Ole Miss, Texas A&M, LSU, Florida. Now, as you see, he still has room to make a last-second official visit. I think that could potentially be Miami. If that actually does happen, that obviously very much increases Miami's chances of landing him. Maybe Oregon gets in there. I don't know. This could be a bidding war because he does play quarterback, and let's be honest, it's a big part of what recruiting is now, name, image, and likeness. So, yes, I do think that's at play here because I think that's at play for almost every quarterback that plays their cards right. And I do think Rashada, who actually pushed his official visit announcement to later this week, very well could be playing the cards right now. He already has a name, image, and likeness deal as a high school player. So this guy knows what he's doing. Now, we already did a deep dive on official visit data that's centered around Jaden Rashada, the initial breakdown, and we've already broken down his high school film as well. I will link both of those videos down below. Now, what does the On3 recruiting prediction machine believe? Well, they believe Florida is actually going to land Rashada, which actually makes a lot of sense because Rashada was his last official visit. Now, what's very interesting is he actually has made 2 separate trips to Baton Rouge. After the Ole Miss official visit, he popped into LSU, which is obviously very good. I could see him going to Ole Miss as well, playing in Lane's system. That is a wide open quarterback room, as is the case kind of sort of at Florida with Anthony Richardson departing. Jackson Dart could be departing this next season for Ole Miss as well. Those quarterback rooms are far more open than LSU's quarterback room. And for me, I listened to some of Rashada's interviews, and I looked to see what his dad said via 247, that a very interesting name that popped up in when he was asked about LSU, and that is current quarterbacks coach Joe Sloan. And they said Joe Sloan has been recruiting Jaden Rashada really, really, really hard to Baton Rouge. So, for me, I don't think Rashada is going to pick LSU. You hope that he picks Miami, simply because you don't want him playing in the SEC. If LSU doesn't land them, and this is the case for any of the other recruits that we've talked about today, you want them to go outside the SEC to a school like Miami or someone else. Not Ohio State, because the likelihood that you would see them in the playoff is really high. So any non-elite power, you want them going to that school outside of the SEC. So if you are an LSU fan, a lot of you want Dante Moore to be the quarterback in this class. Maybe LSU has lost some momentum with Dante Moore that we don't know about. So, yes, you would take Rashada's commitment. That, of course, means you would be more than likely out of it for Dante Moore and more than likely out of it for a guy like Rickie Collins down the road. Because, as many of you know, I'm a big Rickie Collins fan. I would love him to be the quarterback in this class. But if you take a top 2023 quarterback, you're not going to get any other commitments from them. So, for you, I'm asking you, the viewer, do you like Jaden Rashada more than any of the other quarterbacks that we talked about today? To put a bow on it, how many of these prospects do I think LSU is actually going to land? I think they're going to land Reed. That's it. I think the other three, it's very highly unlikely that they do. So does LSU go 0 for here? They very well could. Is it the end of the world? No, because these are just 4 recruits. And once again, I've had a few of you send me this message. Why are we outside the top 40 in recruiting? And all we only hear is good stuff about Brian Kelly. Well, true, you never want to be outside the top 40 at any time when it comes to recruiting, but it is still so very early in the process. And when it is so early in the process and only one recruit can drastically, like for instance, let's just say Jaden Rashada picks LSU later this week, they'll shoot up into the top like 25. Let me know down below how many of these players do you think LSU is going to land, and let's do it. Let's go. It is Power Hour LSU. Bam! Oh, and tonight we're doing crawfish boudin balls. Let's